All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be doing our 2025 preview and prediction for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Welcome to this coaching staff. Greg Schiano back as the lead man. 26-34 record since 2020. Of course, this is his second stint. Kurt Karaoka as the offensive coordinator, third year in the role, and then Rob Smith and Zach Sparber will be splitting the defensive coordinator roles. 33rd ranked high school class, which I think is very impressive. Top 50 portal class, where they got some phenomenal additions. And then 7-6 for the second straight season, so Rutgers is really starting to heat up in New Jersey. Getting things started with this offense. This is finally a unit that came around, and they were, somewhat competent, putting up 29 points per game, having some respectable balance. They returned 8 starters as well, added 7 guys in the portal. We're going to start with Ethan Kamanis at quarterback. This guy was a pretty good one-read thrower, does a good job sliding away from pressure, does a good job throwing hitches and out routes. Didn't do much damage downfield. He only had a 27% comp rate on 20-plus yard throws. Also had 26 drops by his wide receiver, so there's certainly a lot left there on the field. Was a solid passer. In 2024, he can work outside. Can he work outside of the structure of the offense is going to be the biggest question mark. This is a guy that I thought did a lot better than anticipated, Nick, because at Minnesota he didn't really show too much. And if you just give him, a little bit more help, this offense could have even reached newer heights. So I think Kamanis is going to, now his third year as a starter, second for Rutgers, is really going to pay some dividends.
This Rutgers offense looked a lot better than I think people expected last year. 28.9 points per game was a pretty good number. 200 yards plus passing per game was, surprising for Rutgers offense that really never seems to achieve those heights. And a lot of it comes to Kamanis looking a lot better than people expected. He was a good starter during his 1 year at Minnesota, but didn't really wow anyone or jump off the page as a performer. When he came over to Rutgers, I thought maybe he could potentially step up a little bit and be a good quarterback for this team. Better quarterback than Rutgers has had in previous years. But I was impressed, even if the comp rate was low, right? 59% or 54% comp rate is not phenomenal, but 2,600 yards and only 2,700 yards passing is a pretty good number. Plus the 18 touchdowns was really impressive as well. 7 interceptions is a little bit higher than you would probably hope. Also had 3 rushing touchdowns and 251 on the ground. He's a red zone threat for this offense. He was the only quarterback that took a snap last year. Rutgers did not use any other quarterbacks, which I found quite interesting. 395 attempts through the air for him throughout the season. I think getting another year in the system, getting back and really kind of getting more comfortable with the setup is really good for a quarterback like him. Didn't have a lot of help from his pass catchers at times last year with a bunch of drops. Wasn't really that accurate downfield, which is certainly a problem. I wonder if he can improve that accuracy this year. But I think the offense will be playing at a similar number. I think 2,700, 28, 2,900 yards passing is probably a realistic expectation. Maybe 20 touchdowns if he can really kind of reach that top end there. Hopefully he cuts down the interceptions because 7 was a little bit high. But overall, I was impressed with his first year starting Piscataway.
Now, I moved to this rushing attack. And for a couple years, Nick, when we've been doing this, I'd always say I'm waiting for the Rutgers rushing attack to break out because I thought they always had a respectable backfield. In the last 2 years, they finally did. Kyle Monaghan, back-to-back 1,200-yard campaigns. He's now off to the NFL, but they're going to stay in good hands. The addition of C.J. Campbell from FAU is tremendous. This guy was a dual-threat back, 40 receptions, 11 rushing touchdowns, had elite ball security, really thrived with yards after contact. I think he's going to do well. Antoine Raymond, all of his production came in the first 2 games of the season, and then the last 2 games. He was a star in the bowl game. I think they have a 1-2 punch here. His zone rushing attack, I think, is going to be in good hands overall. Sam Brown, he's a senior. He's still in this room. Deshaun Benjamin enters his 3rd year after posting 2 touchdowns in the bowl game of his own. I'm very happy with this rushing attack, Nick. You're going to hear me say over and over again how the portal ranking isn't that great, but the players they got, I'm a big fan of pretty much all of them, and Campbell is at the top of that list.
Yeah, I think Campbell is a really good ad for this program. It could be really solid. 850 for him on the ground last year, 5.1 and 11 scores at FAU. Also had 3 receiving touchdowns and 460 yards receiving, so he'll certainly be involved in the passing attack for this offense. He had a really good game against Tulsa to wrap up the season, 100 yards on 15 carries, as well as a touchdown receiving in that game. 118 yards receiving in that one. Was really good against Charlotte as well, 150 and a score on the ground in a game that was a really solid game for FAU late November. So this is a guy that's been solid. He's had 3 games of over 100 yards rushing on the ground last year. Also had over 100 against Wagner, but FCS opponents will take that with a grain of salt. I think he was a really good add out of the portal, though. I think he can be really solid. Nice speed, nice footwork on him. I think he'll certainly be your number 1 back here. Raymond was good as a true freshman last year, about 450 yards rushing for him, 4.6 yards per attempt, 8 scores. I think he'll get some good amount of touches this year. At 100 last year, he'll certainly find a way to probably get north north of that number again this year. I think he's a really solid player. Then Samuel Brown is a veteran that's been around the program for a while. 200 yards rushing, 5 yards per carry, and 3 scores for him last year. He can certainly add something on third down there. I think he's a really solid number 3 back to have in your backfield. I love this backfield. I think they'll be able to run the ball effectively here. I like what they have, some solid depth overall, and I think they really made a nice add by adding C.J. Campbell.
Now you move to the wide receiver group. Ian Strong was a good ex-pass catcher, 6'3", 211. Put on a clinic in the back half of the season, scoring a touchdown in 4 straight games to end the regular season. And then he had 100-plus yards in the bowl game, so this guy was on a tear. KJ Duff, 6'6", 219, had a good debut season. He'll slot right in as that Z-pass catcher. Love the add of DT Sheffield, commanded nearly 100 targets in the slot for North Texas. Had 4 games of 100-plus yards. Final month of the season saw a big production dip, but this gives them a great proven trio at pass catcher. Rest of the group is weak, though, in terms of experience. They have 5 true freshmen breathing down the neck of second-year pass catchers, and Ben Black, Fama Toure, of course, the brother of Mohamed Toure. The only veterans, really, to speak of. Kenny Fletcher at tight end had a great start to the season before going down after 6 games. So they're hoping he can jump back in and be productive for them. I like this trio, Nick. This is a team that might be playing from behind, not often, but I think against some of the tougher opponents, certainly. And when they're ahead in games and if they're staying even, this is going to be a passing attack that I think is going to be quite deadly with what they have at this trio.
I think this is a really solid trio. I think Sheffield's a really solid add from North Texas, 822 receiving for him last year, 11 touchdowns. He was really solid and reliable for them, certainly in the start of the season in October. He had back-to-back 2-touchdown games, also had 3 touchdowns against FS Austin earlier in the season. So I think he's a guy you can certainly find a way to get involved in the slot. I think he's a really speedy player that could be really solid for this team. KJ Duff and Ian Strong were 2 guys that looked good at times last year. Strong, really, it was impressive, 675 for him, 15.7 yards per grab and 5 scores. He will be certainly relied on this year, as will Duff, who had 425 and a score last year. He'll certainly be involved. Ben Black returns as well to this passing attack of 157 yards receiving and 1 score as true freshman last year. Kenny Fletcher at tight end, I think he'll be a solid, reliable tight end. Only played in 6 games last year, but still had 2 touchdowns and 137 yards receiving. I like what they have here. I like what they added in Sheffield. They have some true freshmen like Michael Thomas, Jordan Houston, who I think they really think could potentially be involved in this passing attack in the future as well. This is a solid pass catching group. They got to cut down the drops, certainly have to be more reliable in that regard, but I think another year with the quarterback there in the system, they should all take a step forward. And this should be a solid passing attack, in the Big Ten comparative to years past for Rutgers.
Now you look at the offensive line. Tyler Needham was a great run blocker at right tackle last season. Pretty iffy in pass pro, but looks like he's going to shift to left tackle at 6'4", 306 pounds. Added Ryder at Langsdale from Lafayette, who was a great 3-year starter for them. He's 6'7", 298, so I think they have a quality tackle duo here. Left guard's going to see Brian Felter, who was really good in the first 4 games before an injury. Battle with Taj White, who on the other hand really struggled. White started the last 4 games of the season at right tackle. It was a good run blocker, but he was just inconsistent in pass pro. Dante Chin played the most snaps of anyone at left guard, so they get 3 starters at one position, basically giving them great versatility here. The center position sees the return of Gus Zalinkis, who was very quality at 6'2", 310. His brother Hank comes over from Colorado as a starter last fall. 313-pounder Kawebana Asamoah, he's going to return at right guard. He was above average, was also pretty impressive as a run blocker. Needs to show more power in pass blocking, though. This offensive line has some really good upside here, Nick. Of course, they lose a great left tackle in Holland Pierce. Plenty of experience and versatility to go around, though. They have pretty good depth in terms of experience on that 2 deep. Plenty of different combos they can rock with here. I like this O-line.
Yeah, a lot of combos they can rock with here. I think this is a good O-line. Needham swinging out to the left side after previously being the right tackle last year. I'm curious to see how he adjusts playing left tackle. Certainly a tougher spot for him, but I think he's a player that can certainly develop and be strong there. Brian Felter, I think, was okay at left guard. He'll certainly hope to be solid this year. Asamoah was good at right guard, but certainly needs to improve some aspects of his game, as does Taj White. And the center, Gus Salinkas, as well, needs to improve, certainly. And his brother joins the program as well, which I think is quite interesting. Deontay Chin at left guard will certainly find a way to be involved, as well as Langsdale was not a bad add either, who could play left tackle if Needham struggles. I like what this unit can do here. I think they were really solid in run blocking last year. They return a couple different guys here. They'll be able to improve the run game. I think the run game will be really effective this year and really efficient on the ground. I like what this O-line can do.
I move to the offensive verdict for Rutgers. This was a pretty impressive group considering what we've seen pretty much over the last decade, and they're in store for an even better season in 25. They did have 2 duds where they only scored 7 points, but I think this wide receiver group possesses a good trio. The passing attack overall should ascend, and while the run game is a nice 1-2 punch, and that offensive line is going to be pretty impressive. I'm pretty excited for what this group can do. I think they're going to be good enough for its defensive effort to be noticed. And what I mean by that is the defense always plays very well and the offense doesn't do their heavy lifting. I think this year they're going to have opportunities to play from ahead, be in games, and they're going to be able to let that defense be more free flowing. A B, Nick, that's highly impressive because it's been a C plus for years. We're up to a B. I love what this offense has, quite frankly. I'm going to enjoy watching them all year long, even if it's not the most talented unit. I think they're going to play hard and they're going to impress people.
A very well-deserved B. This is an offense that looks a lot better than any Rutgers offense in previous years. Returning 8 starters, is phenomenal in the Big Ten. You're getting back some guys that certainly contributed, including your starting quarterback, who I think will take a huge step forward this year. Yes, losing Kyle Monagai is certainly a big blow. If you had him returning, this would be a B plus, A minus offense. But I think what they brought in C.J. Campbell is certainly a guy that can be close to replicating that sort of production. He'll be really solid here. I think Ian Strong, D.T. Sheffield, and KJ Duffy are all solid wide receivers who can have solid impacts. I like the O-line. The O-line is full of veterans that are really solid. I think they have a really good group there that's very versatile, and they can swing a couple different guys around here and there. Didn't do a whole lot in the portal, but I think the ads they made were solid in Sheffield and Campbell. I'm really happy with this Rutgers offense. If you're a Rutgers fan, I think this team will score some points this year. They can certainly get to 30 points per game. They were close to doing that last year. I think this offense will be very competitive in the Big Ten.
Now I move to the defensive side of the ball. They returned only 2 starters. They picked up 9 guys in the portal, though. Some pretty big additions here. Entire defensive line's gone. Most of the secondary as well. You start with the defensive end spot. They picked up 2 really good players from the group of 5 level. Bradley Weaver was a phenomenal run defender, had 16 sacks over the past 2 seasons for Ohio. Over the past 3 years, James Madison import Eric O'Neill has 31 sacks. First 2 years of that did come at LIU at the FCS level. Also has shined in run support. So some great adds here. Certainly the Big Ten's going to be a bigger test for him, though. Jordan Walker, 6'4", 264. Posted the second most tackles for loss on the team and also tied for the lead with 4 sacks and a little over 300 snaps, showcasing great efficiency. Jordan Thompson saw the field for nearly 450 reps, but wasn't all that good for them. This is a nice edge group here. Plenty of experience. You look at the interior defensive line. Also was headlined by a few transfers. Doug Blue Eli, 322-pounder, was a good player for USF as a tackler in the hole. Liked what he did against the run. Darnold Dinego comes over from JMU as well. Was more of a rotational piece for them, but was good in his appearances. Keshawn Griffin, Zaire Agbo, both saw nearly 300 snaps to establish a quality group here. I like what they have up front, Nick. I know it's a lot of transfers, but they also they bring back some guys that got on the field last year and made a bit of an impact. So I think coming off the edge, they have 2 nice transfers. And the way I view Rutgers players, especially on the D-line, is they're usually going to play better than the paper would indicate due to how exceptional the coaching is here, and I think you're going to see that rub off on this D-line.
Some of the transfer heaviness on this defensive line definitely worries me, but overall I do like what they have here. I like what they brought in. I think the 2 guys that they returned, certainly on the edge there, in Jordan Thompson and Jordan Walker, the 2 Jordans, I think are really solid. I'll start with Thompson, 26 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, and a pick for him. He was solid. Walker was better, 19 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 4 sacks for him. A really good, impressive number for him there. I think he'll certainly be involved on this defensive line and really create some headaches for some of these Big Ten offenses. Bradley Weaver was solid at Ohio last year. He's been around a little bit here and there. I think he's a really solid add, a guy that's got some good high upside speed. Eric O'Neill, he's bounced around, and he was really good at JMU in 2024. 18.5 tackles for loss, 13 sacks, 17 QB hurries, plus 3 pass breakups. He was just a menace on that JMU defensive line last year. I think this is a really good add. A guy from Staten Island, so really good to get a guy back from that area. So I think it's a really solid add from Rutgers. He was previously at Long Island University, where he was solid for them as well. I think he's a guy you want to rely on. When I look at the interior, I think Noga from JMU as well had 6 tackles for loss, a sack, and 5 QB hurries. Another good add from that program. I think he's a guy that can certainly step up and be involved in this pass rush. While Blue Eli didn't really do a whole lot last year at South Florida, only had 1.5 tackles for loss, 17 total tackles, but he's a guy that's been around college football for a while, a couple different programs. He's from the state of New Jersey, so nice to bring him back into the fold. I like what they have here. I think, Kenosha Griffin as well is a guy that had 12 total tackles and 2 sacks last year, so he'll certainly find a way to be involved. I like the depth here, I like the rotational ability. Certainly all the starters are transfers right now, but I think the 2 Jordans could be really solid for this team as well. I like what this defensive line can do.
Now you look in the middle of this defense. Daniel Jajabom was the top tackler on this team. Had under 105 stops, led the team with 7.5 TFL as well. Was solid versus the run. Mainly was just a highly efficient tackler. Moses Walker will step into the starting lineup. Wasn't all that good, but he did play 200-plus snaps. Abraham Wright, Sam Robinson, the two backups, both got on the field a little bit last year. I think this group will be solid. Backers typically seem to play the game the right way and be effective in the scheme under Schiano. It's just a common theme, Nick. So even though these guys, for the most part, don't stand out in terms of like recruiting ranks or experience, they're going to be just fine, I think, in the middle of this defense.
Maybe a weaker unit on paper, but I think they will be just fine to overcome that. Jabome is really solid for this team last year. You have top tackler. They return their top tackler, which is always nice. 105 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and a pass breakup. Not bad there. Moses Walker was not great in his reps. 31 total tackles, a tackle for loss. He's got to clean up his missed tackles, but as a starter, maybe he'll be able to do so. Abraham Wright was not bad in his 9 games, 13 total tackles and a sack for him. He was able to get on the field and do something here and there. It's definitely a weaker unit for this conference, but I do think if these two starters can step up and play strong football, clean up those missed tackles, it may not be the worst unit in the world.
And they move to the secondary. They bring in Cam Miller from Penn State. He played a lot of snaps for them as a rotational corner over the past couple seasons. Was never great in coverage, but certainly wasn't bad either, and was a pretty strong run defender last fall. Bo Mascow was really good in his 560 snaps for the Scarlet Knights. He'll be stepping into a starting role and was basically in one last year as he spent time either out wide or in the slot. Jacoby Henderson played 800 snaps for Marshall. He was an above-average player, played nearly all of his snaps outside corner, but is likely to occupy the slot with Mascow's experience there last year. Any formula is certainly on the table, though. I also had like 12 interceptions with Henderson in NCAA, Nick, in one of my dynasties. So maybe there's something special there. Safety group returns Kaj Sanders. Wasn't all that good, but played lots of snaps in a versatile role. Jet Elad from UNLV is another one of those tremendous additions. He was a 2-year starter. Phenomenal season this past fall for the Rebels. Chris Joins, who was really good for Mercer, especially against the run, also joins this group. Good unit here. Versatile secondary. Depth is certainly a tad bit unproven, but I like the starting group they have penciled in. And some of these transfers they got, again, very underrated, and I think they're all going to do some damage.
Yeah, I like the 3 adds here that we highlighted. I think could be really solid for this team. I start with Cam Miller, who played in certain reps for Penn State, got some opportunities, but now he transfers to try and get a full-time starting role. I think he will be a full-time starter at left cornerback, a guy that you can certainly rely on. 27 total tackles last year, 4 tackles for loss, 5 pass breakups. He was solid in his rotational reps for the Nittany Lions last year. Henderson is a really talented player, had 10 pass breakups last year and 2 picks in a Marshall defense that was pretty good, 50 total tackles for him. He could be a really good star player that could certainly unlock his potential here. And then Jet Elad was also solid for UNLV, a guy that previously was around in various stops at Ohio Garden State Community College before ending up at UNLV. The Canadian was solid for them last year, 84 total tackles, 6 pass breakups and a pick for him. He had 11 tackles in the bowl game against Cal, a pretty impressive number there, as well as a pass breakup in what was a solid game for UNLV in that matchup there. The rest of the team returning in terms of defensive production. Bo Mascon was solid last year, 50 total tackles for him, a pick, 5 pass breakups. Kaj Sanders, as a freshman, was not bad either, 43 total tackles and 4 pass breakups. He's a younger player they hope to rely on. I like what the secondary can do. I think they added some solid pieces overall. They were not a bad unit last year. They certainly weren't a crazily good unit, but a unit that returned some solid pieces, but also added a lot of key pieces out of the portal. I think the upside is certainly there.
Now you look at the defensive verdict for Rutgers. The Scarlet Knights defense really crumbled in the back half of the season as injuries really piled up. That's not exactly representative of what Schiano and this staff can accomplish, though, with all hands on deck. I really like what this group has. The defensive line's vastly underrated, have good pass rushing depth, while the secondary has some good talents. The weakest area is going to be that linebacking core, but that's the group, again, this staff shines at most when it comes to progression. I think they're going to be just fine, Nick. I know we have a lot of excitement. I'm still going to give it a B only because, again, they are still working at a deficit when it comes to overall talent. But I think scheme and coaching is something that Rutgers is going to shine with, and they continuously have under Schiano. So I'm going to go ahead and give them a mid-level unit here that will improve across the board.
I think a B, B minus would certainly be a fair grade. I think B is quite fair from us right here. I think they really did make some good adds there. I think Cam Miller was a really solid add, as was Elad out of the portal. Eric O'Neal could certainly be a solid piece for this defense as well. They held opponents to under 26 points per game last year, 25.4, which I thought was a solid number. They were banged up all year long, a ton of injuries here. If they can stay fully healthy, let that coaching fully set up there, and let this system go to its full potential, this could be a really strong defense come the end of the season.
We look at the schedule and the final prediction. Rutgers has been one of my favorite portal classes that is in college football. As they went out and got some really good players at almost every single position. Lots of schools. Jesus Christ, what am I reading here, dude?
You're right, man.
Dude, I fucked up my notes. I do this all the time. Okay, I got it. Now I move to the schedule and the prediction for Rutgers. I think the Scarlet Knights have one of my favorite portal classes in college football. A lot of schools, they just go out and add veterans with no experience. Well, the Knights added legit difference makers around the roster. I think there's guys on offense and defense that are going to play key roles for this football team. How much can this team truly compete? Unfortunately, not very much with the big dogs, but this passing attack should complement the run game quite well. And the defense is always going to play tough and not just get gassed out due to what this staff brings to the table. I think they can beat any mid-level opponent in this conference, and I think with some of their best showings can certainly knock down an elite opponent, especially if the defense shows up. If schools like Purdue and Northwestern can compete for the conference like we've seen in the past, Nick, over the past decade, I certainly think that Rutgers can be in that realm as well. Don't know if it happens this year, but they host Washington, who I think is going to be really good. They host Oregon. Maybe they can go on the road and make some noise against Illinois or Ohio State, and they also get a home game against Penn State. So this is the opportunity to make things happen. I don't want to overreact and reach and say they can win 9 or 10 games. I just don't know how realistic that is. But they're going to scare one of these top-level opponents, and I think they're probably going to beat one of those three that come to Piscataway. Don't know which one it is. I'm going to be rooting for it, and I know you will be as well.
Yeah, longtime viewers of this show know that Dalton and I both have a soft spot for Rutgers, myself especially, but Dalton has become a big fan of them as he's got to know me over the last couple of years. This is a program that they fight hard. This is a team that used to be down in the dumps. They were the Big Ten's punching bag forever, but Greg Schiano came back for a second stint after having a lot of success when they were in the Big East. He won 5 straight bowl games at one point when they were in the Big East before he ended up leaving for the NFL. He came back and really took this program out of the dumps. They were completely the bottom barrel in the Big Ten. They were absolutely getting punched on every single week, and now he's turned them to a respectable program that can win 6-7 games a year. They went 7-6 the past 2 years, went to 2 bowl games, won a Pinstripe Bowl, fought hard in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl last year. I think this is a team that can get to a bowl game. I was trying to find a way to get to 7-5. I think maybe you pick up that win at Minnesota or Washington on October 11th. I think those are probably your best opportunities to get an additional win compared to the 6 that we already have right now. So I'm certainly targeting that if I'm a fan of this program. I do think this team is a really solid roster across the board. I think they've added some solid pieces. The portal stats I don't think really are reflective when you look at rankings. The portal to the 48th ranked portal class. I think these guys will be a lot better than the 48th ranked portal class once they all come together and play for this team. The non-conference is a cakewalk, should be really easy setup there. This conference schedule is tough certainly, but maybe you catch Oregon lacking at home coming over from the West Coast. Same deal with Washington. It's a tough flight to come from the West Coast. You get them in back-to-back weeks, that could help you out. Maybe you catch Penn State napping at the end of the season at home. That could be certainly an opportunity. Maybe you beat Minnesota on the road in September where the weather is still not that big of a factor. Up in Minnesota, it's not really going to be snowing and super cold in late September. Should be quite gorgeous, actually. I have high hopes for Rutgers in the future. I think Greg Schiano is doing a great job here. I wonder where he can take this team. He's certainly getting older as a coach, and I'm curious to see if he can kind of elevate this team any further or if they've really met their ceiling, which I think is certainly maybe probably the case right now. But I like what Schiano can do. I think the defense is really strong. I think Kaliakamakis is a steady starting quarterback who's got good experience in this league. CJ Campbell was a great add at running back, who I think will be really solid this year. I'm excited for this Rutgers season. I think this team can certainly find a way to get to a bowl game. Just got to pick one game off that they're going to be the underdog in. If they can do that, they'll compete for a 3rd straight bowl and try to put some more respect on the Rutgers name in Piscataway and really have a solid season for the fans.
And again, I know it sounds unrealistic, but the stars really do align for them to potentially do some damage. If you want to beat like Indiana last year, where you end up in the CFP, and they didn't really play anybody compared to what this is here. But we see it every year, Nick, where their sleeper teams that just rip off win after win, kind of like Vanderbilt this past year. I mean, they played everybody in the country tough, and they even knocked off a number 1. Rutgers, I think, is kind of in that realm this year, Nick. I think they can, quietly play some good ball in the first half of the year, and I think they can beat Washington and Oregon. I know back-to-back, that sounds unrealistic, but I think that in a scenario, in a dream world, I think that is totally possible. I give it at least a 1 to 5% chance that Rutgers can do something like that.
I think they can certainly find a way to upset a big team here or there, and it really starts on August 20th on a Thursday night at home against Ohio. Got to start the season off strong, put up a good showing there against that team. I think that certainly sets a tone early on for you. I think you get 3 nice wins against Purdue, Maryland, and Iowa there, but you got to find a 4th win somewhere else in conference play. Can they do so to go to a bowl game? I think it's certainly possible. Only time will tell, but I'm certainly rooting for this team. I love the energy that the coaching staff has brought to this program, rejuvenated life into what was really a dead program down there in central New Jersey. They're back. They're playing solid football. I think they'll be solid this year. Rutgers is back, and hopefully they can get back to a bowl game.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.